All right, welcome to the Bow Trader Podcast. Whether you're a long-time listener or joining us for the first time, man, I'm glad you're here. My name's John Keene, and I am the founder of Bow Trader, and we're just excited to be able to do this podcast and bring this to you on a weekly basis. You know, on the podcast, we're diving headfirst into the wild world of hunting and the great outdoors. We talk about all kind of different things, whether it's tracking and scouting tactics or just cutting up and telling silly tales and stories about things that we've gotten into when we've been out there trying to do some hunting. But we're always focused on the beauty of God's creation. From gear reviews and how to practice to finally making it to that awesome thwack of fall, buddy, we are here for it. Our faith is woven into every episode with real, down-to-earth discussions because it's not just about the hunt. It's truly about what matters most. So grab your gear, settle in, get you a cup of coffee, and let's get after it. Let's go. Wait for it. Listen, there's no Dub isn't here this morning. So Dub is see that's not the same. Not the same. Dub is we've got VBS going on this week. So he's volunteering at VBS this week.
Do you know how many kids are at that VBS?
Kids, I think 550.
Yes, they were over 500 kids.
Yeah.
And there was like 240 something adults.
Yeah, so we're
people.
That's
incredible.
we're a little under 800 people like total, I think. But yeah, that's pretty wild, man. It's like the biggest outreach that our church has every year. Is VBS.
Y'all's is all week.
It's all week long, yeah.
Ours starts Sunday.
Sunday night, it'll go through Wednesday night. Yeah.
So they do VBS in the morning from whatever 8 or 8:30 or something like that until lunch, and then they do a music camp that runs, after lunch. Like they give the kids lunch, and then they do the music camp for a couple hours or whatever. So
Yeah.
I've heard some pretty cool stories
That's
from that.
good.
It's such a great program. I mean, growing up, I felt like the parents just sent you to every VBS in town. Just so
Oh yeah.
get out of the house.
Yeah.
But even just volunteering at ours, like I feel like almost I get more out of it than the kids.
Absolutely,
probably do.
man.
I mean, it's just crazy that childlike faith. It'll open your eyes. I got an example. Yesterday,
Pull that mic over closer to you.
Sure. Yesterday it was raining, so as a forester, there ain't much I can do. So I was at the home office cranking out some reports and stuff like that I've just haven't sat down long enough to do. And so we had lunch at the house, and Joseph, my technician, was there, and obviously Tara and the two kids, and we asked James to pray, and James, he'll be 3 at the end of July.
Yeah.
And he prayed, and like Tara and I are like, I'm bawling, like I'm crying, like the fact that I have almost a 3-year-old praying. Like,
What did he say? Did he say something about you?
no, no. He said he was thankful for Jesus dying on the cross, and it was one of those things that it shook me.
Oh, yeah.
It shook me to
cool,
the
man.
core. And I was like, last night, Tara and I were talking, and I was just like, man, you do all these things, and you don't think anything's sticking, and then you get that.
God gives you glimpses.
You get that glimpse.
Yeah.
You're like, man, all right, this is
Stay the course.
stay the course. Everything's okay. The 14,000 times you threaten to spank them or doesn't sleep or this and that. That was one of those moments. I was like, wow. All right, cool. God, I appreciate that.
Maybe we're not screwing it up.
Maybe we're not screwing it up. Oh, golly. Yeah, that's awesome. That was a pretty cool moment.
Heck yeah, man.
But yeah, VBS is one of those things. I feel like that environment creates that confidence, and they know who their God is and and all those things. So
it's good too, because it does bring a lot of our church together with like a focus. And so a lot of people get to be together and even meet for the first time as they serve together. And it's a really cool, like, church family ministry that gets to take place. So you really get to spend time with people that normally you may not get to spend a ton of time with.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing like serving together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing that, that replaces that. There's nothing that builds community like that does. And, so to see, like you said, to see the church come together and rally behind doing something like that is huge.
That's right.
And people don't realize, it's not that people don't realize it. It's not really, it's an unintended benefit of the spiritual growth that comes for the entire congregation through doing something like
Right.
that. The goal is to serve these kids and to give them an opportunity to understand, that there's more to life than going to school every day or being out for summer break.
Just all the things
or
the world hyper focuses on.
Or wanting to go to to the water park or, whatever's going on. And some of them that are there are, they don't know what their next meal's going to look like.
That's
right. So we've got to realize that, we talk all the time about how, America is the best country in the world and all this kind of stuff. Well, there's still poverty in America, right? There's still very bad situations in America. And, so we don't need to ignore that fact either. All
right. So Tate this week is at his second Bible school.
Yeah.
The first one he went to, I think they had a total of 9 kids. There's a little small church up in Portal.
Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to Emma Yates, who worked really hard to put that together. But you know what? It's a small, struggling church. And I felt like that they did a really good job. He was excited to go every night. And, that's how they build. That's how they start building in the community. The second one is in Rocky Ford.
Okay.
And there's probably 30, 35 kids there, just a country church but it's a drastic difference to see 540 kids.
Right.
And another one, 9.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're both doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Doing the exact same thing.
You can't, and I think something else that we'll do is we kind of gauge our, we gauge how well we're doing based on how many show up. And I think that, I don't think that that's the best.
Well, I don't, it's not a total reflection of how it goes, but that's a pretty dang good outreach.
Yeah.
Just to get them there. Some of them may have never, heard the story of Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah.
And you never know what kind of fire you may be lighting right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's funny that you say that. So the other day, I don't watch TV. I don't. I watch sports on TV. I watched Duck Dynasty or something like that. That was, when that show was on, that was the theme song. That was the soundtrack for my kid's life was like, the ZZ Top opener to the show or whatever. But we're in a different season of life, right? We talk about that a lot amongst ourselves about being in different seasons, and Jase is in the season of little kids, and you're in the season of, getting ready to send your boys out. I know Tate's got a little while, but it won't be long, and you know that. And Brandon, that's where you're at, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I find myself awake at night, waiting on people to come home, and it's fine. Everybody knows what time they need to be home by. Right. But my daughter's 20. And she's in a relationship with a guy who seems to be, I think he's okay. I don't know. I've made it clear to him that I don't think prison is that bad.
Absolutely.
So, my words were, I have found the ability to be content anywhere. Yeah. And I don't think prison would be that bad. Yeah. So that wasn't a threat. It was just
just making a statement here.
So anyway, that's a long way around to get to this point of. So I found myself, looking for something to watch the other day, and I turned this show on, and the dad on the show, it was like this reality show. I don't even remember the name of it. The dad on the show he got water pumping somewhere. He was like doing farm work or whatever, and he got water pumping. He said, I feel like Moses. And his son, who was in his 20s, says, who the heck is Moses? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what just happened? Yeah. So you saying that there's kids that are coming that have never heard the story. Man, I guarantee you there's going to be some that are there that have never, they have no idea who Jesus is. They have no idea what, that there is a creator that made all this. Because that's just not, if you think about things from a public school standpoint, that's not what's taught. No, it's we're taught, we're teaching our children that that there was a evolutionary thing that took place, and whether it was a big bang that caused all of it or whatever. I don't know exactly what theories they're teaching them anymore. But I do know that they don't call evolution a theory anymore. They just call it evolution, So I don't know where that change took place. But anyway, I think, and I think that
it's the same thing as like people that tell stories that are half truths. The more they tell them, the more they become true, and they believe it themselves. Like this actually happened when it didn't. I think it's the same thing with a lot of the evolution stuff and all. You tell it long enough, and eventually you think like, all right, this is the truth. It's no longer a theory. This is fact. And so it's I think it's like that, because I think we all know people who, the more they tell a story, the more they believe it.
The more they believe it.
Yeah, and it may or may not have happened that way, but
no, that's true.
After telling it 100 times, it's the truth.
Absolutely.
And so,
man, that's wild.
You believe a lie long enough, and it'll become a truth.
I guess so. Yeah. Or at least in your head, it'll become the truth, right? So that points to that idea of people having their version of truth. Man, that drives me crazy.
Yeah,
when somebody says that.
Yeah, that's logically ignorant.
Yeah. When somebody tells me, "Well, that's your version of truth," and I'm like, "Hang on, what?
Wait,
now there is only one version of truth. I mean, it's either true or it's not." But it drives me up the wall.
Yeah, that's a way of normalizing behavior so nobody gets their feelings hurt.
People gonna get their feelings hurt. I mean,
and you know what? We're scared of that today.
What, hurting somebody's feelings?
Yes. My mama is not scared to hurt my feelings.
No, sir. No.
And you know what? Looking back at it now at 59 years old, I'm glad she wasn't.
Yeah.
Because her version of the truth and my version of the truth were not the same. And I've come to realize that I didn't have a version of the truth. I had an opinion.
Yeah. That's a better way to put it.
But
you have an opinion.
Was the truth.
Yeah. No, listen, I'll tell y'all, like I told my class on this past Sunday, and I said this, and I thought that this was common knowledge. But when I told them, they were like, "Man, I've never heard that before," and they, laughing or whatever. And I was like, "What's the big deal? There's 3 things you need in life. You need caffeine, nicotine, and a mama that's mean. If you got them 3 things, buddy, you can get somewhere." And I guarantee you, I had the mama that was, yeah.
Not near enough kids get whooped with a fly swat or a piece of Hot Wheel racetrack anymore. They just don't.
They don't have to go pick their
know.
own Switch anymore. That's what my grandma used to do. She'd make me go get my own Switch.
Are going to know what a piece of Hot Wheel racetrack is. You remember those things?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're
about
talking
3
about.
foot long, and they had a little tongue that you stuck them together.
Oh,
Yeah, they like pieced in.
Yeah, that was good stuff. And it was a good whipping material, too.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't have that. We grew up poor, so we didn't have that, but we had wood spoons.
Wooden spoon works.
So Mama had
Boat paddle.
I'm kidding.
Double hander.
Mama had this thing that she would use that was cut out of wood that she would use to like pull the oven grate out. You know, it had like a little hook cut into it. Well, that thing dubbed as a paddle too.
Yeah.
And buddy, she could get that thing moving.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the day that I moved out of the way. We had stools in our kitchen. And if we did wrong, we knew, all right, meet me in the kitchen. That means go to the stool and assume the position, right? Well, I moved one day and she hit the stool and broke that little thing. That was not a good situation. That was not a good situation. So my mom she's sweet. I'm telling you, I've never questioned if she loved me or not. All right. There's never been a point in my life where I questioned if she loved me or not. I don't know exactly what she did when she was in the military. I know she wasn't like an actual drill sergeant, but she was something of that effect. So she's tough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I remember being 15 or 16 years old and I said something I shouldn't have said, and I don't remember what it was. But I remember the next thing I saw was a flash and I was on my back. And it was Mama that put me there. Thankfully, it was into a bed, and maybe that's why she did it. But, buddy, she put me on my back. I mean, like that. And when I was 16, so when I was 17 years old, you know, like you talked about some of these kids, you know, it's only about sports and what do I get to go play and all this kind of stuff. That's all I care. I take that back. It was fishing and it was football. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. If it wasn't football season, or you know, or we weren't practicing for football or something, I'd make sure I got all my schoolwork done when I was at school. And when I got home, I hit the door, I walked inside, got a fishing pole, and I was right back out the door. You know, or I'd walk in and make, you know, like 3 sandwiches and eat them, and then I'd be back out the door. Yeah. But so when she did that, you know, I wasn't like some kind of little kid. But, man, she took me out. I'll never forget it. I will never forget that mess.
The humble experiences always are something that's sticking in your head.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I might have told y'all this before, but I was watching a interview with Bo Jackson. And Bo was talking about his mama because he was raised by his mama.
Yeah.
And Bo said, you know, I was 18 years old the last time my mama gave me a whooping. And the guy doing the interview kind of looked puzzled. He said, Bo, you were a big old boy at 18. How did your mama give you a whooping? He said she had a belt in one hand and a .38 pistol in the other one. And she said, run if you want to. He said, and I stood right there and took that whooping.
Yeah. That's
built different.
Good night, man.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That'll do it.
Heck yeah.
That'll do it.
Good grief. Yeah, Bo Jackson, man. That was one of my favorite athletes. Big time bow hunter, even still. But just some of the stuff, some of the stuff he did on the football field and the baseball field was just incredible.
I didn't realize when he was in college, he was recruited by a major league baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
They flew down and picked him up on a jet and took him up for a visit, which was illegal at the time. And that caused him to have to sit out a year of his college baseball career.
Mm-hmm.
So when his career was over, that team drafted him number 1, and he said, nope, because you did that to me without letting me know that was illegal, I ain't playing. And that's why he went to the USFL first. He was the number 1 draft choice out of college in baseball, and he told him he is not coming because y'all treated me like that.
Didn't he wind up playing for like the Royals or something like that?
Yeah. He was ridiculous. His arm was...
Holy cow. I watch those videos on Reels sometimes. He ran to the right field wall, picked up a ball, and threw a BB to home plate.
To home plate, yeah.
I'd like to know
over 300 feet.
Yeah. I'd like to know the velocity.
Well,
when he threw it,
it's funny you say that because he was playing left field and it was a little blooper that the guy on first didn't think he was going to get
out
to
at first.
He threw back behind him.
That ball had to be going 110.
Yeah, they said how fast
I mean,
it was.
it's
and it
just
was unreal.
It's humming.
I mean, I've seen good arms. You know, Ichiro had a great arm. Some
Acuna's got a good arm.
Acuna, but Bo Jackson's arm, it was different. Just like he was different, it was different. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the video of him and Pat Dye in Biomeda hunting ducks? Oh yeah, he's a big archer.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson that's how he deer hunted, was archery. He had a shop set up in his house.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We were over in Alabama. It's been a couple of years ago now, and he was building a new house. And where we were going hunting, we drove right by it every day. And so that was pretty cool. I'm not going to say where it was, but no, it wasn't
I'm sure it was small.
Wasn't very small, but yeah. So he's still affiliated with Hoyt in some way. So and that's who we were hunting with, was the Hoyt guys. So pretty cool stuff.
Very cool.
But anyway, so we were talking about food plots before we turned the machine on over here.
Yeah.
We're Jase, you're definitely in the middle of this because you're doing, land management stuff for people and everything. So
yeah, it's kind of wet right now. We went like 60 days without rain. Then we get a gully washer that just, if you put seed in the ground, it washed it away. And then we had like a little lull period where you could have replanted, and most of us didn't because our fields were wet. And then we just got rain the last 2 days. And,
a lot of rain.
And so, yeah, fields are still wet. But, no, I'd hate to be a farmer. That's all I got to say is it's tough. You think you got it figured out, seed in the ground, fertilizer, lime, the whole nine, and you stick it in the ground and Mother Nature takes it away. And
9 inches of rain real quick.
Yeah.
Well, now, around us, the peanut farmers are the one that's catching it. The guys that planted that corn,
corn's
holy
booming.
cow!
Yeah.
I mean, it's already
Corn's
tasseled.
booming.
There's ears. It's unreal.
Yeah.
The growth rate that corn had. I mean, it had to get that rain just perfectly. It was
Absolutely
awesome.
perfect. Yeah, but I was curious to see how it would have responded to that 60-day lull of like zero rain. There was some corn that was on pivot. I mean, it was tasseled out, and like 3 weeks ago. Like, it was just nuts. I mean, 6 foot already. I'm like, oh. But yeah, it hit
Are people
perfect.
planting corn earlier now? It
That's what it
seems
seems
like
like.
they're planting corn.
Yeah,
earlier.
they're not doing the wait till Easter. Planting.
it seems
they're-
like it.
they're
Corn's never been kind of a wait till Easter thing.
No, it hasn't,
Cotton
but-
definitely is. Corn can really handle cold really good. Corn is, it's a tough plant. It's in the grass family. It can handle a lot as far as heat and cold tolerance. It just doesn't do good without water.
Yeah, if it doesn't have water, it ain't growing. So that was what I was interested to see how it responded when we had that.
Yeah, 60 days is a long
60 days is
time
a long
for corn.
long
when you're looking at something that's, I don't know what the varieties are now, but let's just call it 150 day.
Yeah.
When you're looking at something like that, and you don't give it water for 60 days for a third of its growing period, that can really be a problem.
So we've got more corn around us than we've ever had. And I talked to a farmer the other day, and he said they went to corn because cotton and peanut pricing, the bottom is just falling out of it. He said, well, really the bottom's falling out of everything.
I was going to
But
say,
he felt like he could get more money out of the corn.
I hope he can.
But the amount of peanuts and cotton that we used to have is just right around us there in Hope you like it out there.
I gotcha.
We got corn. I felt like I'm riding through Iowa or somewhere.
Yeah, there is a lot of corn out there. Yeah, but when you look at corn prices that are, in the $3 range, $3.40, I think is what one of my farming friends told me that they booked some of theirs for. You got to make You got to make a bumper crop to make any money.
Yeah.
So, but cotton's worse. You know, I mean, when you're selling cotton for 65 cents a pound, you know, and you know you got $1,000 an acre minimum to get that to carry that crop through to harvest. You know, I mean, do some math real quick about how many pounds per acre you need to pick. Right? I mean, it's a challenge.
So I also talking to a buddy of mine, Mr. Ryan Brandon, Portal, Georgia. Shout out to Ryan. Cotton prices are the same now as they were in like the 20s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Cotton has not gone up at all.
It's fluctuated throughout the years. Like in the early 2000s, it got up over $1 a pound. Well, no, in the early 2000s, it was really low. The last cotton I sold it for 15 cents a pound.
Wow.
I'll never forget. I went to the cotton gin in Brooklet. Dominic Strazo was running the cotton gin at the time. He called me and said, "Hey, we got your totals done. You know, come by whenever you want to or whatever." And I went by there and picked up my check for the cotton and, then left there and carried it to the bank, you know. And anyway, he asked me, you know, we talked for a minute or whatever, and he said, you know, how much you think you're going to grow next year? And I said, cotton? He said, yeah. I said, Mr. Dominic, you won't see me up here again. That ain't happening, buddy. There's no way, you know, because I mean, back then, you know, I had somebody come in to harvest it, and that was like $30 an acre, which now there's no way they're doing it for that now, not with paying, you know, close to $1 million for a dang cotton picker. Yeah. You know, I mean, they're probably charging $100 an acre to do custom harvesting at this point. But that's what I paid back then, was $30 an acre, you know. So the expenses were a lot more reasonable, but not 15 cents a pound reasonable. You know, there was no way.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Jase, I got a question for you.
Okay, what we got?
Because we have so much corn and peanuts around us, it kills our dove season. It kills it. I mean, you can grow millet, brown top, whatever you want to do, and about the time dove season comes in, they cut the corn.
Yep.
All your doves are gone. Okay, now you get a few more doves back. You know, you entice them to come back.
That's right.
And then about the time you get ready to shoot them again, now they're pulling peanuts. Now here goes our doves again. Can we help ourselves by planting something different? Like I'm really thinking about planting some pearl millet. I mean, because that's different.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I mean, it's not a peanut. It's not a corn. It's something that they like. Proso.
Yeah, Proso is really, really good. How big is your area?
It's small.
Small.
It's small, but when the doves get there, I mean, we had a couple pretty good shoots with just 3 or 4.
When you say small, like 5 acres small?
No, it's smaller than that.
Is it?
Yeah.
So
and we're in a flyway where the doves roost and then they fly to the cornfield. And we were able to cut them off, and they found what we had last year was brown top, and we had a pretty dang good shoot.
Heck yeah. Yeah, it's tough when you're battling against the farms, because like you're saying, I mean, you got hundreds of acres of corn, hundreds of acres of peanuts, or I say hundreds, it's thousands of acres of that. So yeah, you're battling. I mean, it'd be like going to Super Walmart or going to IGA. I mean, they're gonna go where all the food's at. But your best option on that side is kind of diversifying. But if the brown top worked, you probably want to do like a 50-50 on the Proso brown top, and probably just do strips of both, because they will mature at different times too. So it'll extend your shelf life of your field as well. You'll be able to hunt it throughout the season instead of just.
Well, that's one reason I like brown top, because we can cut it early, shoot over it, and once we get that rain on it, boom, it sprouts right back. And by the time the first frost gets here, it's got another head on it again.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a really good option. But yeah, your best bet on that is stick with the Proso. I've had great results with Proso. I normally do it on field edges on most farms I manage, just to have another seed head for the quail and the turkeys to eat on. But the dove absolutely crush it too.
So what happened to all the dove shoots? Where are they at?
I don't know. It used to be, years ago, you could find a dove shoot every weekend. One of your buddies would be having one or something, and you could.
I think
go
it's
to
just.
it.
I mean, it's just like we're talking about. I mean, it's expensive to operate just a farm. So a lot of these guys don't have an extra 50 acres just to set aside for a dove field.
Right.
I mean, a lot of it's that in my mind, I think. I mean, I've got some clients of mine. I mean, their property is set aside just for recreation. So I mean, that's it. So they want to have a social hunt and have their dove fields and stuff like that. So,
you have an advantage because the very best dove hunts I have ever been on were clear cuts.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
where they've gone in and
absolutely.
really thin some timber out. And what is it? Why do them doves, or why are they attracted to that?
There's just so many things that come back from that. I mean, one is just honestly bare dirt and having some gravel to chew on. I mean, we got a lot of dirt roads, but there's not a lot of gravel and stuff for them to chew on. So it's a combination of a lot of things. They've got there's cover. So a clear cut's ugly as sin, but you got cover, you got food, and they can roost on the edge of it and feel protected. So, I mean, there's 100 different things that they like, but yeah, clear cut's good for literally anything. I mean, any critter's going to be in and around a clear cut. Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, which means coyotes are going to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I had this turkey season, was calling a turkey up on a clear cut edge, and I saw some movement out of the left corner of my eye. I was like, what the heck? Turkey's on the right hand side. And I've had this happen twice, but the coyotes were actually like chasing each other. They were like, I don't know what they were doing. They were playing or whatever. But
the coyote rut.
Yeah, then they were. I mean, in my head, I'm like, well, I guess they're just rutting or whatever. But well, them two didn't quite make it out of the clear cut.
Yeah,
I had to. I was like, man, I got a gobbling turkey. Like, I let these guys go or not? Nah, they gone.
Good choice.
Yeah, the coyote is probably, in my mind, one of the most misunderstood. Is that the right word? So there's a guy that I follow on Facebook, and he fishes, and he only fishes at Tybee Island. So he must live out there or something. But there's a coyote that keeps coming up behind one of the restaurants, and they see him. And he was talking
on Tybee?
Yeah, on Tybee. And
Good
he was
grief.
talking about trying to get rid of him because he's skinny and, oh my goodness. The people that came out of the woodwork, leave him alone. It's just, they think they're cute, and it's a coyote until their little Fluffy gets gone.
Yeah.
Or their cat gets gone. If you look at some of these places in Atlanta, I mean, they have a huge coyote population up there. Again, nobody hunts them.
Yep.
And they got plenty of food.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they've exploded.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the damage that the coyote does to your turkey population. I mean, you might have let that gobbler go that time, but how many did you save?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. And I'm 34, so I'm not that old, but like,
just a spring chicken.
well,
man.
I'm just thinking like growing up, like you wouldn't see a coyote, like growing up deer hunting, like you didn't hear, you didn't see. I think about like armadillos, like when I was younger, like we had a farm in Cordele, like we had armadillos in Cordele, but like where I'm from in Marietta, like there weren't armadillos up there. There are armadillos all the way in Tennessee now. So like you've got this weird, like you got critters moving and they're in different areas than where they historically have been. I mean, you think about if you look past colonization, like when Indians or Native Americans were here, there was fire readily available on the landscape. The landscape was broke up. There were farms, but they were kind of just micro farms. So they weren't these huge, large acreage areas, but you had huge swaths of grassland. You had bison and elk, and you had mountain
even
lions.
here.
Yeah,
That was something. Yeah, that was something that was here.
Is like you had that down here in South Georgia, but your predators were In some areas there's bears. I mean, there's even bears in Vidalia. I got some clients in Vidalia. They got 350-pound bear showing up on the trail camera.
So Vidalia would be part of the central region still, right?
Still, yeah. So those bear are probably coming from the Macon corridor area.
Down the Okmulgee?
They're probably coming. Yeah, I guess it would be. There's and then you got Oconee that's kind of in between. I guess is that Dublin? Is that coming?
Yeah,
Oconee comes.
Yeah, so they're probably coming down that corridor. And then we hadn't even talked about it, but the hogs, like,
oh my gosh.
I mean, the hogs have always. I mean that was brought in mainly from settlement, but like. And they've just exploded too, and that's mainly because of the large ag component we have down here. And trying to stop them is just it ain't happening. Like they breed and
they just
and
reproduce
so fast. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamics when you start looking at like how the landscape is changing, but also the critters are changing as well and adapting and coming and going. But yeah, I guess talking about like apex predators, like, well, coyotes are backfilling what bears and lions were doing. That there's a void, so it's like they're backfilling what void there is. Yep. Because there is no predator besides us for a long period of time. So it's just interesting kind of looking at it from that standpoint.
Well, when we were young, John, I mean, we never saw a coyote. Mm-mm. You never saw an armadillo. Mm-hmm. You never saw any of that stuff growing up in Bullitt County.
Yeah.
You never saw a turkey.
Right.
Yeah. Very, very few deer. But you look at what was in the news this week and how they are developing so much property, putting houses on. Thank goodness the commission voted not to approve a 141 home neighborhood somewhere down around Brooklyn. But
either 95 or 59 home neighborhood, like out on 119.
Yeah.
I mean, they're popping up like daisies.
Where are all those critters going? You know, we're pushing them around.
Oh yeah.
We're pushing them around.
Absolutely.
I mean, they can't stay where they're at because if you ride out by the golf course, there's a brand new neighborhood. I promise you there is 100 houses in that little subdivision, and every one of them are identical. Now, they may paint them different, but every house looks exactly the same from the outside, front and back. Where are these people coming from?
Everywhere.
Yeah, you're in the real estate area too. So what is that looking like?
I actually have one of those houses under contract right now with a buyer. It's nuts. It is nuts. I mean, I've got a few first-time home buyers that are looking. I've got parents that are buying houses for their college.
Yep.
And that Statesboro is kind of one of those spots. Like we're kind of in a little bubble from a real estate standpoint. Like I've got friends in Atlanta, and my mom's a real estate agent in Atlanta, and there's a lot of ebbs and flows. But when you're in an area like Statesboro or any kind of college town, and you have industry in proximity, it's just like it's an explosion. And then, I mean, if you look at any university in the state of Georgia, Statesboro or Georgia Southern it's got the most ground around it for growth. Athens is hemmed up. Georgia Tech, like that's
where are they going to go?
They ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Georgia State, same thing.
I hadn't really thought about it.
So you look at where you've got the ability to grow. Well, Statesboro is about the only university that I can see in the state that really has room to grow and has industry. So like you got like LaGrange College and stuff like that are in cities and whatever, but they don't really have that much industry. The Hyundai plant kind of kicked a lot of that off here.
Yep. And you got, a university like ABAC, but their offering is not as diverse as what Georgia Southern offers. Right.
Correct. So in my mind, that's kind of the driving force behind that. But yeah, you asking like who are the buyers? I mean, it's a mixed bag. I mean, it's an absolute mixed bag. And then like anytime you've got industry coming in, you've got people looking for secondary homes or properties and stuff like that. So that's a whole nother market of, hey, we want 50 to 100 to 200 acres to be able to go recreate on the weekends or have a secondary cabin, or so that drives that market as well. So anything under 200 acres around here, I mean, it's affordable for folks that are coming from out of town, but us as locals, it's not as affordable anymore because everyone's getting priced out.
Speaking of getting priced out, we got our tax assessment last week, and our value of our house and property went up $95,500. Now, if any of y'all want to buy my house and property for what they've got it assessed at, I will sell it to you today. But I read an article. It's been years ago. There was a new car manufacturer that came in down around LaGrange somewhere. There's a big auto manufacturer down there. And it was in a Georgia Trends magazine or something. I was reading it. And they said the number one reason they chose that area was because of the recreation opportunities for their employees. The lake was there.
Yep. There's a lot of room for that. Yeah, it's interesting. We're definitely I've lived in Statesboro. June 1st will be I guess we're past June 1st, man. Would be 10 years for me, which is just nuts. And just in that 10-year span, like, it's nuts. I mean, I was blessed enough. I bought my house in Woodlawn Terrace, right in the middle of town, well-established neighborhood. And I bought that house for, I think, $190,000 in 16. I mean, that house has doubled plus just in that short span. I mean, so it's just crazy to see, like, just within a 10-year stamp, like we're talking about the amount of neighborhoods that have gone up. I mean, it's gangbusters over here for sure. But like you're saying, where are the critters going? They're eating on a lot of fertilized yards right now.
Pansies and daisies and yeah.
But it's interesting because, like, that neighborhood you're talking about, literally on the back side of that neighborhood, you got an ag field.
Yep.
And then, like, so I mean, it's kind of, we've got this hybrid of, like, urbanization, but we got some stronghold farmers and timber guys that are holding on to their larger land bases. So really what's going to happen is, if you have larger land holdings for recreation on the fringe of all these areas, like, you're just going to be a petting zoo. I mean, you're going to have so many critters. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it all shakes out. But yeah, habitat is being lost. There's no doubt about that.
My dad's been saying for years, and, when you're younger, you always listen to your dad, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, Dad. But he's been saying two things for years that have come true. The first thing that he said, well, not the first thing that he said that I thought was crazy, but one of the things that I really remember I keyed in on was that he said the day was coming when a college education was going to be worthless. And I feel like we've gotten there.
Yeah, we're about there.
He said first what was going to happen was you were going to have a college education to do anything, whether it was driving a trash truck or being an engineer or whatever. You were going to have a college degree to do it, because we weren't teaching kids how to do anything in high school. And there are some areas where stuff is still being taught in high school that is not, completely useless, but by and large it's pretty useless. And then he said that a college degree was going to become worthless. And, man, he hit that nail on the head. I mean, like a prophet or something. And then the other thing that he said was Bullitt County was going to be the bedroom for Chatham County and Bryan County. And doggone if that wasn't the truth. Yeah. I mean, it's like we can go anywhere. We can drive anywhere 5 miles from this location right now, and you're either going to see a bunch of houses being built, or you're going to see a zoning sign on the side of the road in a field. Yeah. And I mean, so we started out our conversation talking about farmers and kind of what they're doing. And we see a lot more corn being planted because they're trying to figure out, what do I do to try to eke out, a living right now? And they don't see it in peanuts and they don't see it in cotton, even though they're sitting there holding, $1 million in equipment to support growing peanuts and harvesting peanuts and growing cotton and harvesting cotton. That's always the tough part to me, is this farmer has got all this equipment that, it's not about, well, you got to grow peanuts to pay for your peanut picker. Well, no, you just have to pay for the peanut picker. Yeah. The bank doesn't care what you grow. Yeah. They don't care how you pay for it. They just want you to pay the note. Yeah. Right. That's the obligation there. So the idea that you got to grow peanuts because you have a peanut picker is silly. But at the same time, if you don't own a combine, how in the world are you going to grow corn and soybeans? You can't go out there and pick it with a cotton picker. So I mean, it's when we've got farms that have put so much emphasis on a singular crop being cotton. There are farms that their best equipment is built for cotton. And it's really hard for them to go in and say, hey, we need to diversify this year. Well, if they got to buy a combine, you're talking about $200,000.
Yeah, at minimum.
When you get into areas like this in any business, I don't care what it is, when you get into a spot in any business where you're operating on reduced margins, which is what they're doing, it's really hard to swing and miss, right? If you got to swing, that's just the way business is. You got to swing. You're up at the plate. You got to swing, and there's no such thing as a ball in business. Whatever that pitch is, you got to swing at it. And a miss when you're in that situation is really tough. So then what do? You wind up selling land.
Yep. Yeah, it's a lot easier to just put a for sale sign and
well, you start by cutting timber.
Yeah, you cut all your timber.
Right? You start by liquidating assets.
You cut all assets. Cut all assets. You obviously are do a hunting lease or something like that to generate a little bit revenue. But yeah, and then at that point, it's like, well, crap. Bob down the road just sold his for $15 an acre.
For $40 an acre.
For $40 an acre.
There's some right down here.
We looked at that the other day.
There's some right down here.
Yeah, but
$40,000 an acre for farmland. How does that farmer say, nah, I think we need to keep farming it?
Oh,
at some point, we have to say, and I'm facing this same thing right now. Okay, I'm looking at the same situation right now because I own some land that is in a. You and I have talked about this, Jase. Because of where it is, there's no telling what we could get for it. Yeah, and I'm facing the same issue you are, Wes. I got that same notice from the county, about what my new assessed value is. It would make your head spin if I told you what it was. Yeah. And so that's what my taxes are going to be based on.
Yep.
So, at what point does that farmer or that family that has owned this real estate for a couple generations, at what point do they say, hey, we might not ever see this again?
Yeah.
You may not ever see the land again, but at what point do you say, we may never see this kind of market again, and cash out on it?
It's a super tough decision because then you think about, okay, well, if I hold, is the next generation going to hold, or are they just going to fold?
And when they fold, is it going to be for 40% less?
Yeah, but you look at real estate across the board, like there's really never, and you never want to say never, but there's really never been a time where real estate has not decreased in value, especially in an environment like this.
Hold on. You weren't here, but in 2008,
well,
it
for sure
it had a major decrease in value. But it don't matter where you were.
I was in Atlanta where my dad builds custom homes. He went from 300 homes a year to 0 for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
So No, we were in the thick of it. So not saying that, but you got to look at real estate's not a year-to-year thing.
Right.
Real estate
it's a long game.
It's a long game. That's why a mortgage is 30 years standard. So it's the long game. But talking about, I mean, these are conversations I've got with clients all the time of like, this is like standard. It's like a brother, sister, like couple siblings. They've got an estate. They're like, one of them's like, I want to keep it together. Then you got the two brothers and sisters, and they're like, well, we would love to keep it together, but it really doesn't make sense. Like, we live in Atlanta or we live in Charlotte, and we get to see it one time a year. Like, why don't we just cash out? Well, then you get these 300-acre parcels that get cut down to 100, or they get turned into neighborhoods, and that legacy play is no longer there. It's tough. I mean, yeah, it'd be really hard to turn down $40,000 an acre when you're paying a tax bill on it, you're paying land tax on it, and you're not utilizing it. It's not producing anything for you, or you're just scraping by as a farmer.
Yeah, so I was going to say, when
you're making it, but you're barely making it. I don't know. It's a super tough conversation to have. And then on like the farming side, it's a subsidized market, and anytime you subsidize anything, I hate it. It just ruins it.
I hate it, man. That is the reason I got out of farming, was because I realized that I was going to depend on
play the game.
Getting a check from the government every year.
The game. And it's terrible.
Yep.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it made me sick to think about that. I'll never forget talking with my dad about it one time. And, we all have these conversations with our dads, right? when we're going out into the world, and, we're going to have these same conversations with our sons and stuff. And I'll never forget my dad saying, son, I don't care what you do. I don't care, what your goals are or anything like that. He said, but you need to realize, if you're going to start a family, you've got to provide for them. Right. And he said, I don't want you to be in a position where you're depending on something else or somebody else. You need to be able to provide for your family. So make smart choices. Don't try to live outside your means. Just a conversation like that. Right. And so I remember sitting with my dad back when I was farming and going through stuff, and I was showing him where our revenue was coming from. And he was shocked when I showed him how much revenue came from support prices on commodities. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what that is, right? And he said, that's welfare. I said, well, I wasn't going to say that. I said, but yeah, I mean, it kind of is. So, yeah. And I don't look at other farmers and be like, man, why are you doing this? This is ridiculous. I mean, it's how it's how the system runs. And, I don't know. It's a tangled web, dude. That's all I can tell you. So all this stuff we've talked about this morning, it feels like we've had this doom and gloom conversation about things where we've been called to live with joy, right? I mean, that's what we're called to. We should be joyful. We should not be these. We shouldn't be pessimists. We shouldn't be ignorant optimists either, but we should be joyful in any situation. We should find contentment in any situation that we find ourselves in. And so my daughter, she's doing VBS this week, but her boyfriend that I've talked about a little bit, his church is doing a camp this week. So he's there, and it's a camp like where the kids come and they stay. They have cabins and all this kind of stuff. So she's been going over there in the afternoons, and they did a devotion time yesterday, and the pastor was talking about joy, and he used it as an acronym where he said we have the choice to choose joy, and we can look at joy itself, the word, as an acronym: Jesus or yourself. So which one are we going to choose? Are we going to choose Jesus, or are we going to choose ourselves? So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I'll share this too. Y'all know one of my absolute favorite people, one of my favorite senators who has ever graced the halls of Congress is John Kennedy.
Oh, he is great.
I love him. And he said recently, he said, he said recently, I get up in the mornings and I say, Jesus, I want to live for you today. I want to do whatever you want me to do today. He said, but then by about 10 o'clock in the morning, I just want to slap the hell out of somebody.
That's exactly what he said.
Oh man, I love it.
He's got the best one-liners out of anybody in Congress, man.
He does.
Oh my gosh! Now, and there are others that I really like. I like Ron Johnson. I think he's a great guy for a Yankee, and I think that he is. I think he's fiscally conservative and wants the best for our nation and for our nation's people and everything. But back to that idea. How do we get to that place where we say, I'm going to choose joy, right? Because if we can do that, if we can live every day with saying, we're not going to let these circumstances affect our lives, it's gonna be a game changer for us, at least inside our minds, right? I mean, we may not always be able to change our circumstance or our situation, but we don't have to let it ruin us. So, what do you guys think?
We all got kids, and do you know how mad it makes me to see my ratchet with a 9/16 socket on it laying out there in the rain because somebody fixed something and they left my tools out there. But then I stop and go, you know what? One day this won't be laying out here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to miss that. So there's a lot of times in a lot of situations that I reflect on that, and you got to be joyful.
But you still go out there with a belt and a 38, right?
That ain't quite that bad. But you know what? I got to be glad that he took the time and he knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And he did it. He just didn't finish the drill.
Finish the drill. That's right.
And we talk about that. But, your wife gets mad because there's clothes all over the floor and stuff. Hey, they're good kids. They're not in trouble. They're not calling us from the jail. We're going to miss that one day.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
So we have to learn to be joyful in all those situations, even though you might want to slap the hell out of somebody every once in a while. But I think one of our major issues in this country is people don't know how to derive joy out of a situation because it's so negative. Everything you see is negative. This used to be Pride Month. Well, it's not anymore, according to our president.
Right.
But there was a big article yesterday where Tim McGraw and Faith Hill's daughter come out as gay. Why do I care? Why is that news?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they putting that in front of your face? Instead of saying, hey, this is Veterans Month now. Let's support our veterans. We got to get inundated with who's gay and who's not gay. And why is that news? Is that selling? Is that what people are buying?
Yeah. People like controversy. People like drama. Yeah. And so that's what they put out there. I mean, Faith Hill, Tim McGraw, two big names. Their kid comes out as gay. Well, now half the country split on
how we support them or do we not?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the two things I think that keep people tuning into the news are fear and drama. I mean, just those are the two things. And I don't care if you watch Fox, CNN, MSNBC, it's all the same crap, man. If we can keep you in fear, you'll keep tuning in. Or if we can keep you some drama stirred up, you'll keep tuning in. And, and then you get where it's like, who do you even believe? Because I mean, personally, I don't believe anything that comes from MSNBC or CNN. I mean, for sure. But even on the other side, I'm just a very big skeptic when it comes to anything that brings money and power. I think it corrupts at the highest level, regardless of if you're a Democrat or Republican. I think that, and y'all can think I'm crazy if you want to. You probably do anyway. But I think that's why Elon Musk got out. I think he has found so much money that is being wasted. But when they started getting into it, it was fixing to bring everybody down. Yeah. It didn't matter if you were Democrat or Republican. Because let me tell you, it ain't just Democratic congressmen that are going in without money and coming out loaded.
Right.
And so they're all benefiting from it.
Yep.
And if we can keep things stirred up, from a news standpoint, then people are going to keep tuning in. That's going to give us more revenue. That's going to give us more advertising. That's going to give us more money. So we're just going to say whatever our viewers want to hear, and we're going to slam the other side so that we can keep the pot stirred. And that's why, people tune in every night, and they sit there, and you got people that just sit there and watch Fox News for 24 hours a day. Yeah. And it's the same thing.
That would drive me crazy, man. I can't do it.
Yesterday, Biden's press secretary, whatever her name
was.
What a
joke.
She decided she's not I'm a Democrat anymore.
Oh,
yeah. She came out as, I'm not Democrat anymore. I just seen too much stuff. But then on Fox News, you have people like Ainsley Earhart, who I believe tries to keep the joy.
Yeah,
she's just different in that, and she talks about her faith all the time. And I feel like these news agencies their job is to take your joy away. Yeah.
Well, again, if they can keep you in fear, you're gonna keep tuning in, because what if this happens? What if that happens? Yep. And that way you keep looking, because oh my gosh, I got to know, because
you're looking for answers. Like they want to just keep you on your edge of your seat. So you're looking for answers from them, not anyone else.
Exactly. And you look at it too with the press secretary for Biden, with her stepping. The whole reason she did that is to write a book about what is really going on.
1,000%.
And people are so stupid that they look at Jake Tapper and they look at Kier, whatever her name is. And I'm like, do you not see through this?
Yeah,
do you not? She was one of the biggest players in the cover up for Joe Biden. And now she's writing a book about it. I mean, it is greed at the highest level. And you talking about like taking your joy. How miserable would it be to have to live in lies every day to try to get what you want, because greed has control of your life so much. And yet they live with, and Scripture talks about this. It's as though they have holes in their pockets. They'll never fill them enough. And so the cycle just continues over and over. And some people are that way, whether they're in, whatever business. But man, greed will take your joy. There's so many things that'll take the joy of life from you. I really think the simplicity of joy is the intimacy of a relationship with Christ. And, if we focus on that, I really think that's the source of joy. I've been thinking a lot about lately you hear this saying all the time, like such and such lives in my mind for free, or lives in your mind for free, rent free. Rent free. And I've been thinking about it, not in that way, but thinking about it from a standpoint of what am I wasting energy thinking about? Like, what am I wasting time and energy thinking about that doesn't matter? That's just taking away not just joy, but just stamina, energy, vitality, ability, all of these things. Like
just brain capacity.
And what do I spend time that's just wasted mental, emotional, just a drain. And I've really tried to evaluate that, because I think a lot of that's the stuff that wears us out. It takes our joy. I think every now and then people, one of the big things now is like to minimalize like your, get rid of all the stuff you don't need, and get your, the organization of your closet or your kitchen, and get rid of this. If you don't use it a certain amount of times a year, throw it out and da 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 da. But I think we need to look at our lives that way too and go, is this really that important to take up this much space, either in my mind or in my life? Or is that something that needs to be removed? And because, there's a lot of stuff I think about during the day that shouldn't take space in my mind. It's worrying about, what so-and-so thinks, or living and thinking about things that happened a year or 2 years ago that, now how do I handle that? Can I let that go? Can I move on from that without letting it occupy that space in my mind? Or do I just keep going back to these things and worrying about it? And there's so many things I think that we let take our mental, emotional, spiritual, and eventually physical life, and it just drains us because we spend so much time on things that don't really matter, So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And, it starts with the things we see, the things we hear. Everything, like you said, is doom and gloom, but it's hard. It's hard when we're inundated with more information than we've ever been before to keep that perspective, It's like everything's tugging at us to take our eyes off of Christ and to put them on something else. And it can be good things, man, but it's like, gosh, it's a fight. It really is a fight. And I think about Paul saying at the end of his life, I fought the good fight, because it is a fight. Been reading through 1 Peter. We've been going through a series on 1 Peter at the church, and he talks about like arm yourself, arm yourself with what it takes to live for God. And it's like, this is not something that comes easy. It is a battle. And I think sometimes we get lost and we get lulled into thinking it's just going to come to us, and it doesn't.
Like we can just drift into it.
Yeah, and you're never going to drift closer to God.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen.
That lazy river doesn't lead to where he's at.
And the path of least resistance seldom gets you to a good place.
I'd say that lazy river, you need to be swimming upstream to get where the Lord is.
Yeah, and you probably want to get out of it anyway because somebody peed out.
Yeah, ain't no doubt.
Yeah, I don't do water parks.
Nah, nor I.
I'd much rather go jump in the river.
Yep.
And yes, I know sharks live in the river. That's okay. I'll take my chances.
Yeah.
Good grief.
But yeah, in some ways, I feel like we've just lost the simplicity of our faith. It's like we've lost the simplicity of just knowing Jesus. And that's a place I've been at a lot lately too. It's like, I just want to know him. I don't need all the other stuff. I just want to know him. And I think that's the simplicity of it. And that's where, the fruit of the Spirit is, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, those things. And so those are fruits that, at least in the abundance God wants us to have them, I can't produce.
Well, it's not. That's the point.
Yes.
Right. And it's like when we look at the fruit of the Spirit, it's not something that we're producing. It's just something that is a product of the Spirit in our life. Right?
Yeah. And I think about it too. People will say like, well, you've got the fruit of gentleness or you've got the fruit of joy, but like the Spirit is all those things.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a package deal. That's not like
Yeah,
a spiritual gift thing. Like I have the spiritual gift of criticizing people.
Yeah, I have.
I don't think that's a spiritual gift, but
and so you look at it, it's like, no, like if the Spirit's operating in you, all these things are manifesting in your life. And we know how the fruit is produced by abiding in Jesus. And, you know, if we abide in him, then he'll produce much fruit in our life. But apart from him, we can do nothing. Yep. Apart from him, we're left with our flesh and our ability, which doesn't do much. We know what our ability earns. The wages of what we can earn is death. But the gift of God is eternal life. And so, man, simplicity is something we've really lost in just knowing Jesus.
Well, and it is a simple thing that he's called us to: love God, love people. That's it. If we will take everything, every situation that we're facing and every decision that we need to make and lay it against those two things as a litmus test.
Yeah.
You know, if I make this decision to do this, is that representing that I love God and that I love people? It'll change how you make a decision.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that hard. We make it so complicated. We make our own lives so complicated because we base our decisions, we base what we're going to do or where we're going to live or whatever off of the wrong information.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is simple. And a lot of the stuff we think we have to have, we don't. And so, for example, I was at a baseball tournament my son was playing in, and it was over the weekend. And yes, I do go to my son's baseball games on Sunday. And if you don't like that, again, I have an email, Brandon at idon'tgiveacrap.com. So you're welcome to send it to that. But I'm going to be there with my kid. And if I'm dependent upon the church to disciple my son, then I'm in the wrong thought process anyway. So we're at the tournament. Well, the director of the program asked me if I'd start doing a devotion on Sundays. So I'm like, yeah. So after the game on Sunday, get everybody together. And I just shared what had been on my heart is that passage. Some people trust in chariots, some in horses. We trust in the name of the Lord our God. I shared it 5 minutes. 2 young guys that I actually help coach with, like more of a mentor to them as they're growing as coaches, come up to me. One of them literally would get to games like not late to the game starting, but to our call time to be at the field. He would get there late every time because he's out partying and he's trying to just get there, right? The other one, I mean, honestly, I love them, but they've lost his ball in high weeds when it comes to spiritual things. One of them comes up to me literally with tears in his eyes, and he's like, I want to talk to you more about this. Like, you know, that helped me connect some dots. Well, then the other one told me 2 other times, like, man, that really meant a lot to me. And so that weekend kind of planted a seed. The next time we were together, we're on the phone and we're going to talk about like the next day and the plan for the game and all this stuff. Well, we spend 25 minutes just talking about the gospel and laying it out there. And they're like, this is like stuff we've never heard. Like one of them had grown up in a Catholic school. Then he went and played baseball at a Southern Baptist school. And so he was like, I went from the Catholic school to all of a sudden I got a dude at like this in my face, and he's like, yeah, stop doing that, you know, and like, so he was like, he's just confused. And so, but he was like, man, this is connecting so many dots. And I say that to say like, that was just shared on the beside a baseball field, you know, and simple. Right. And yet God uses it in ways that, and I couldn't make that happen. And the simplicity of it is cool. And, you know, I was thinking about with the you talking about, Wes, the numbers of 9, 35, and 540. And then next week we'll have there'll be a bunch of youngins at that VBS. And we'll know how many there were. But the thing is, like, it doesn't matter how many people are present if we're void of his presence. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
If he's not there, nothing happens of eternal value. And that simplicity of that, of have I created space for the presence of God?
Right, yeah, that's what I was. Okay, I'm glad you said that, because he's going to be there, right? We don't go somewhere and take the Holy Spirit with us. He's there already, right? That's part of what we believe about God, is that he's omnipresent.
He's everywhere,
right? But we'll create things. We'll let's just look at it from our lives. We'll create such a packed schedule that we don't leave space for the Holy Spirit to work.
Yep.
You know, I put it like this: we're always we practice something every day. Like you'll see a doctor is practicing medicine, or a lawyer is practicing law, or whatever like that. So those two things it makes sense for us to view it as a practice. Well, every one of us is practicing something every day. We're either practicing letting the Holy Spirit have his way with our life, or we're practicing holding the Holy Spirit back. Mm-hmm. We're doing one of those two things every single day.
Well, and he's a person, right? He's not he's not a thing. He is a person who is grieved, who has all of the personality traits that we would have. And I say he's a person, he's God, but it's not like he's a thing. It's not like he's electricity that is a thing that just shows up and there's power. Like, he is God among us now, right? If God the Father is in heaven and Jesus is seated at his right hand, then who's with us right now? Mm-hmm. And like you said, like, we've got to make room for him. We can crowd him out with just busyness. We can crowd him out with our own plans. We can crowd him out with, all these other things. And sometimes I think even in church, we're like, okay, Holy Spirit, we got a place for you over here in the corner. And if we need you, we'll call on you. But we got this. And I think that can be a challenge for all of us, is we can get so good at doing Christianity that it's not even Christianity anymore.
Yeah. Oh, man. And the truth is that pushes people away from the church.
Well, and why would we want them there if the presence of God isn't there? Because all that's going to do is leave them more disillusioned than they were when they walked in.
Yeah.
If what we read in Scripture isn't happening in the church, and they read Scripture for the first time, well, this is apples and oranges. Why is this not lining up? And it's not that we're going to be perfect, and I think we can be transparent about that. And I'm not even really talking about behavior. I'm talking more about the presence of God, which is what should separate God's people from the world more than anything, is God's presence working among us. But if people come in and we're like, this is what we believe, and this is who God is, and he's real, and he's active, and he's alive, and they come in, and all it is is if they went to another gathering that put on a program. And if that's all it is, then heck, I can do that without being with the body of believers, And I think it's just simplifying it to the presence of God. Like, am I personally in an intimate relationship with God? And are we, as God's people, making room for him in our lives corporately? So,
so 10 days ago or so, Phil Robertson graduated to glory. And so they've been, it's been in the news a little bit, and the family has been putting a lot of stuff out, and they do a podcast, and I was listening to it. I was listening to one yesterday while I was working, And by the way, that's why we don't do a video with our podcast. We've thought about it. We've actually even tried. And then I sit and I think, and I'm like, I don't want somebody sitting for an hour and a half or 2 hours watching a video of us talking.
Yeah.
That's like, that is a productivity killer that I just can't live with.
Even though like you guys are incredible looking.
Oh yeah. Handsome, you know, we're all put together. We get up here early in the morning, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, so anyway, they're talking about his life and everything. And they were talking about how his whole life was about sharing the gospel because of what Jesus did for him, you know, the change that it made in his life and everything. And Jase was telling a story yesterday on the podcast. Jase is one of his sons. He was telling a story on the podcast yesterday about how they can remember hunting on public land, and you would be close enough to another group that you could hear them talking. And he said their conversation and our conversation was so different.
yeah.
You know, they're over there telling stories and laughing and cutting up and, you know, you would hear cussing and stuff like that going on. And we're over here and we've got somebody that we don't know in the blind with us, and Phil's sitting here telling them the gospel. And then, you know, saying, keep your face down. Don't look up. Don't look up. All right, boys, cut them. And then they'd kill birds. And then he'd go right back to telling them the gospel again.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was woven into who he was. And, you know, we look at somebody like Phil, you know, he referred to himself as a low-tech man in a high-tech world.
Yeah.
He didn't have a cell phone.
Simplicity, man.
He has no idea the impact he had on social media.
Absolutely not.
Right? I mean, there's untold millions of people that heard the story of the gospel because of him, and he did it somehow while living an extremely private life.
You know, about halfway through the Duck Dynasty era, do you remember how the show used to sign off?
With the
Them
prayer.
praying.
Every night.
Yeah.
At the table, all them sitting at the table with the prayer. Yep.
Yep.
They sure did.
Yep, absolutely.
I think, I mean, just Phil Robertson in general, the Unashamed podcast you're referring to, like,
Yeah.
just pure gold. And they talk nothing I mean, they talk about hunting and just like we're doing, but they are preaching the gospel
Absolutely.
at every corner of that. And when Phil was still on it and doing well, like just hearing him talk, and I mean, us as men, we're looking towards obviously a father, an earthly father or a heavenly father, but he was just a man's man, a guy that any of us could look up to. And just knowing the hard life that he lived and how Christ changed his life. I mean, that's just something that we can all look at. And I think it's just the Lord put him in a place and gave him a platform, and he used it to the nth degree. And I think that's something us as Christ followers and men of God, like whatever platforms we have, like putting God first, like what are we doing with it? Because you look at someone like Phil that took it to the nth degree. Like you said, he didn't really know the social media side, or he didn't know the podcast he was listening to. He's not counting the millions of people that are listening to it, but all he knows is he's keeping the main thing.
Yep.
And I think that's important for us to look at and to emulate as well.
Yeah, keeping it simple.
Keep it simple.
Have you ever seen the very, very first videos he ever did?
Yeah,
goodness.
they're pretty.
That's Doug killing.
Killers. I'm talking about killers.
They would go out in the swamp and they would spend the night in the blind, him and Coco. So an hour before daylight, Coco would get in the boat and go run the shad nets while Phil cooked breakfast right there, and then they'd meet back up and just kill ducks. I mean, I don't know how they did it without getting over the limit.
I don't either.
There was no instructional part of it. It was just
it's
out
killing.
there.
It's just banging ducks.
I mean, old Sweet 16 shotgun, just killing ducks.
Yeah.
And one more thing, Brandon. As a baseball high school umpire,
Yeah.
Would you please have that devotion before the game with the parents?
Yes.
They're the ones that need it.
Yes.
Oh,
and,
no.
And I know I think about that a lot. That's a tough deal. And as a coach, I try to handle those situations well, as in, going to talk to an umpire versus yelling across the field, because nobody's perfect, and there are going to be things that we disagree on. In fact, the last tournament we were at, there was a play at home plate. Guy tagged the catcher tags our guy literally like on his rear end. He's about 6'2", so his hands, look like they're on the plate. And so I walked in. I remember the umpire's name. His name was Matthew, young guy. I walked in, I said, I let the inning in. I said, Matthew, I said, you sure? Like, are you sure? And kind of just messing with him a little bit. And he was like, he got him, and they were thinking like I was going to appeal to the guy in the field. And I'm like, I can't appeal that. Like, that's not his call. No, that's not what I want. And the guy comes up, the other guy, and and I can understand this, but umpires, like, I feel like a lot of them are already on edge.
Oh, sure they are.
Because they're used to getting yelled at and used to the argument on everything. And so the field umpire walks up and he goes, I got him out, coach. And I'm like, I wasn't even going to ask you. And I was like, I don't even think that's your call. Like, I'm not one of those coaches. Like, you're 90 feet away from this. How can you see it better than he did? And so I just was like, what did you see, man? He's like, I just thought I saw him. He tagged him before his hands got to the plate. And what am I going to say to that? Like, the only things that really aggravate me are when someone doesn't know the rules or they're just lazy. Those are the two things that drive me crazy. But there's judgment calls, and it's just like life. You're going to get some things wrong. Yep. And that's part of it. And so, but I sometimes I'm at games and I'm like, I don't know why these guys do this. Like, and I've been guilty too of not look. A baseball field is where I'm at my worst, probably because of the competitive nature of it. And so for these guys that I'm coaching with to come to me and literally on the phone tell me that and this blows me away because I'm like, y'all ain't been around very many good people, because they said, you are probably our favorite person we've ever been around. And I'm like, that's a pretty high compliment. And I'm like, do y'all see me? Are you sure you talking about me? And the thing about it though is, like, with the world the way it is today, it doesn't take much to separate. Yeah. The bar's not real high, y'all. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not real high. And so, but I do understand, like, what you're saying, and maybe the devotion needs to happen before, Yeah,
and one thing as an umpire, I hear very little that comes out of the stands.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't listen to that.
Yeah, you could
listen to that.
Yeah,
and I absolutely invite a coach to come and talk to me. But as they're on their way out there, the first question I ask you is, what's your question?
Yes.
I don't want to hear that I thought it was outside, or I thought it.
Right.
Blue, could you get help? I think he missed the tag. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's all about, and you asked my wife, she told me the other day, she said, I have never seen you study anything like you study these rule books.
Yeah.
As an umpire, if you walk out and ask me a question and I can quote rule book verbiage to you,
yep.
Now you're like, oh, okay.
And the challenging thing that I don't know how you guys do it, which if you just call high school or something, I can understand it. But wherever you go and in whatever age group you're calling has a different set of rules.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that before.
I've got 12U.
Yeah.
Next week
Yep.
It's like the state championships or something here in Statesboro, and they haven't gotten me a copy of the rules yet.
Yep.
Now I can quote you NFHS rules,
Yep.
but there's just certain little things that they do. You know, can they steal? Can they lead off? I don't know that.
You don't know it yet.
So
let me ask you this question: in high school, can you enter a batter without, or can you let someone go to the plate and hit without entering them into the game?
yes, that's called an unannounced substitution.
Okay.
So if it's a legal substitution, then, you know, like let's say John's team sent a batter to the plate to bat, and then you called it and said, hey, okay, that's just an unannounced substitution. We're going to write it down. Coach, he's substituting in. So yes, you can do that.
All right. Because that was a situation that came up. That's
As
totally
long as
a rabbit
it's a
trail.
legal substitution.
Yeah.
If it's a batting out of order situation,
Yeah, that's
now we
totally
gotta
different
hold it.
deal.
But if
Yeah.
he comes to bat and he is a legal batter, it's just an unreported substitution.
I got you. Cool. Well, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit trail, but there was a situation that came
Good
up.
fun fact.
You talk about, I've got 12U this week. Then next Thursday, we have a camp in Augusta that you must attend to be able to call in the playoffs. We're talking about softball. Then when I leave there Thursday night and drive to Woodstock, and I have a 3-day NCAA softball camp. Now, you talking about rule differences.
Yes.
If you're watching the College World Series, Softball World Series like that, there was some controversy last night. Holy cow.
Yeah.
It was something.
Yeah.
It was a game 2-1, and there was a play at second base, and it's all about obstruction. You can't obstruct the base. You can't do this. And the umpire called the girl out, and they reviewed it, and the higher-ups said, no, she's safe because it was obstruction.
Yeah.
And you've got half the world saying, no, it wasn't, and half the world saying, yes, it was, and they're mad at the umpires, but the umpires are calling it the way the rules are written. And people don't understand. The rules committee is made up of 6 people. 5 of them are college coaches.
Yeah.
One of them is an umpire.
Yeah.
And he has no vote.
Yeah.
But, it's
Well,
tough.
another funny situation we had, there was an umpire, and it was a bang play. And I really don't argue judgment calls because a lot of it's pointless. And so I walk out, though, between innings, and I'm actually going over to coach first base. And I walked by him, and I was like, I called his name. I don't remember now. I said, how close was it? And he goes, I'll be honest with you, it could have gone either way. He goes, I was going to make half the people in this park mad one way or the other. He said, because it was that close. And I was like, okay. And, so just talking to him, the only time that I get really aggravated is if I try to do it the right way. Like, we had a guy, this kid was just balking on every pitch. I mean, it was obviously a balk. And so after the inning, I went and picked up the bat from home plate, and I didn't look at him. I just said, hey, I think he's balking about every pitch. And I was going to turn around and walk away. And he goes, he's not balking, coach. And he keeps chirping at me as I'm walking away. And then I turned around, and this is where I'm the worst, right? He goes, coach, another word. And I'm like, I haven't even hardly said anything. He said, another word and you're out of here. And I was like, hey, I got a truck. If you want to throw me out, I'll be glad to go home. And so, but those are the kind of things where you try not to show somebody up, but then like handle it the right way too, and
if people knew how hard some umpires work to be good at the craft. We have a whole website that's put out by a guy in Atlanta, and he does a podcast, but he also has video series. And going into the playoffs, one of the videos they did was an hour long, and it was about how to keep coaches in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
How to handle those situations.
That's right.
You don't want to throw that coach out.
Yeah.
Once you've thrown him out, now he's got to sit out the next game too.
That's right.
You're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
How do we keep those coaches in the game?
Yeah. And that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess we digressed into baseball, but it is good though. I mean, and to think about, all right, how am I representing Christ everywhere? And I tell our church a lot, like, you see the best 40 minutes of my life. After this, it's downhill. So, because it is challenging, to consistently let him be seen in you when the world's throwing all kind of stuff at you, whether it's at a baseball field or Walmart or Lowe's or driving down the road,
Lowe's will get you, especially when you're trying to return something.
Yeah,
man, I've heard that's rough.
You said that about, telling somebody that prison ain't all that bad, and that's what I tell them at the gate when I go into the Lowe's lumber yard. Hey, prison ain't that bad. You need to get somebody to come help me. So every time I go back there, I'm like,
so bad.
I look at my watch and I'm like, well, here goes 2 hours.
Yeah.
And literally yesterday I had to go pick something up, and it was at least an hour and a half. And I'm just going to pick up something I ordered. And so, sorry, Lowe's employees. Jesus loves you too.
Yeah, they do.
But
That's tough.
But do better.
Do better for sure.
Oh, man. All right. Well, good stuff. Well, we'll wrap it up right there. Thank y'all for listening. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed listening. Hey, reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear about. Join the conversation online. Hop over on your favorite social channel and give us some comments. Shoot us an email. You can email us at podcast@bowtreader.com. That's BOWTREADER.com. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about maybe if you want to come join us on the podcast or any kind of topics that you want us to cover, regardless of what it is. If it's hunting related, something that's specific to bows or arrows, new gear, old gear, if you got any kind of spiritual questions, anything about your faith that you're interested in, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to cover it for you. And thank you again so much for listening. God bless you.